Is that real?
Hi, I'm Emily Roger, host of the Boiling Point podcast. My co-host, Dave Vale, and I will bring you thoughtful discussions with leaders who are positively impacting our world. This is The Boiling Point, where leadership and inspiration meet. Here we go, another episode with the one, the only, Pete Stoddart, who is filling in again today for Dave Vale. Gosh, Pete, like you might just be giving Dave like the
Dave
boot.
can't. We said it before. We'll say it again. You can't go on vacation in media. You're replaced. There's
Done.
a lineup of. Do you know
Done.
the lineup of people outside this door that are waiting here just to get my. Just like into one of the, it's long.
I have my list of
I have no doubt. It's a big list.
Replacements.
Cross-offs and well, we got an exciting one coming up right now, Emily. They're all exciting.
We do. Yep. And you know what? I was just thinking of a couple of episodes when we had Victoria Clark on and we were talking about like being hunters and using it both literally and figuratively in like always kind of hunting for that next thing and moving from like the small game to the big game. And then today we have, drum roll please, Keith Beasley on the podcast. And and so this whole thing like just around hunting, around fishing, around all of those things and how like as people, like it's just like for me, even when we talk about like fishing, and I'm just getting back from a fly fishing trip in Belize where I was hosting a group and or a couple of groups. And, you know, it's like for me, like it's what I love about fly fishing is the hunt. And even what I love like about business and sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff, like is the hunt. And then to go out and then actually be able to hunt. And I know that you have been getting ready for bear season. I'm getting ready. I go to Argentina this weekend for a bird hunt. Keith, I think, is in the middle of like turkey season where he is. And but just this whole concept of hunting and then from the business side of it. And so I'm so pumped for this conversation. This is where I need to like tell myself like, okay, Emily,
bring it down.
Tone it down.
We can't. This isn't a hunting podcast. But I do love the analogy because when it comes to business, you know, and really coaching, you know, we're looking for that potential. Like we're hunting down that next opportunity. We're looking for how can we shed light? Like, and you know, as coaches, we can coach in any industry because the process is the process, but it's about understanding that there's so many similarities and people are people, right? So.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, and I wrote about this, I think last year, for a magazine of around, you know, of just how we show up and the whole, like the be, do, have paradigm. And in order to have this catch, whether it is like a business goal or a white-tailed deer or whatever it is, it's like kind of backing that around back to what is it then that we need to be doing in order to get that. But then even closer down on that core level is how do we need to be and how do we need to be showing up every single day and just, all of the ways that then gets drawn on. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have Keith Beasley on the podcast today. Keith is one of the owners of the Beasley Brothers Outdoors, the eldest of the Beasley brothers, an adventurous hunter and outdoorsman who loves to travel to exciting and at times rough destinations, which we have plenty in common there. Keith specializes in capturing the sights, the sounds, and the emotions of outdoor adventures and bringing them to screens across the world, which you can see online with Canada in the Rough, which is now in its 20th season, which is wild. And I have so many memories of watching Canada in the Rough growing up. So Keith, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Pete. It's absolutely wonderful to be here and it's an honor. So I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, we're certainly excited to have you here. We really appreciate you taking some time out to share some of the things that you've learned over your lifespan and give us an update on how things stand today. Emily?
Yes.
Hi, Pete.
Emily's excited. Sorry, froze for a second.
Yeah. No, and so Pete, even with hearing that intro, and I think that like when you are in the spotlight, when your life is on television to some degree and certain aspects of it, it is that like, even with hearing that intro, what else is it that you would love for people to know about you?
Well, I appreciate the intro very much. I still get goosebumps, and I'm humbled that the fact that people watch and find it cool that we share our hunting adventures, because this is something that stems from a very humble roots, like all anglers and hunters, right? You start doing this with people you love and people you care about, and it's things that when I'm old enough that nobody else knew about, there was no social media, you just told your buddies, right? So I'm very humbled about this, that we're talking about what we do for a living and that the world does watch. But I mean, what we'd like people to know most is that the world is full of people who are hunters and who are gatherers and are out there just living a good life, trying to be wonderful humans, part of the balance of the earth. And we're professionals, we're fathers, we're mothers, we're husbands, we're wives, we're kids, but we're not bad people. And hunters are out there just trying to feed their family and enjoy something that's an incredible opportunity on a very natural, beautiful resource. We happen to do it in one of the greatest countries on earth, in Canada. But yeah, I think that's what I'd like people to know most, that hunting's not a bad word. And it comes with some bad attention sometimes through Disney, through media. But in the end, we're just good people trying to live a good life.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Keith. And, from my own personal experience, I started hunting probably 6 years ago now and got into it just entirely on my own. And just for this passion of foraging and wanting to learn about it and wanting to learn about like just where my meat came from and what it was that I was eating. And it wasn't until, to be honest, maybe last year that I kept it private that I hunted. And I really kind of dissected within myself of what was that about. And I feel like looking back that I felt some shame around it because of the judgment that can come of it from others. And there was one day that I was in the grocery store and going through the checkout and was buying steak. And I just kind of had this like aha moment in thinking that I would not be embarrassed right now if I ran into anybody and they're like, "Oh, you're buying a tenderloin." Yet, like, why would I be embarrassed if somebody kind of, knew that I hunted? And it was just this aha moment of like, no, Emily, own what you do and the choices that you are making, and knowing just my integrity and my values behind, what I do. So that just kind of came to my mind. So
great perspective.
I would share that.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I don't mean to vilify Disney. It's an easy example for all of us to connect to. When you watch the movie Bambi, which I love and I think is incredible, but I have to explain to my children when they're 5 and 6 that hunters don't go in the woods when the baby's just born and when the fawns are spotted, and the hunters don't try to light the forest on fire and push everything out of it and shoot everything that moves, right? So it comes with a bad conversation. I just answered 3 anti-hunting emails this morning. Actually, one wished us death and harm, and the other ones were just really angry at us. One responded, a really nice lady from Vancouver. She responded to me, and I just said, like, she's telling me the science is all wrong, and I said, actually, the science for us is all right. I mean, I got 5 beautiful, healthy, active kids that are living a balanced, organic, healthy meat diet that I taught them how to hunt and forage and fish and feed themselves. I said, I haven't seen yet where we've messed up, for depending on where you are on the spectrum of how long this earth has been around. So it just depends on the message. And I think that's, for us, we're out there just showcasing and sharing who we are as people and trying to encourage ethical, moral, responsible harvesting of the natural resource with our provincial and federal governments. Like, this is around the world. So I agree with you, and you just nailed it. You nailed it. Are you embarrassed at a grocery store someone sees you with a pork chop? And somebody had to shoot that pig and clean that pig and process that pig. A hunter just happens to do it on their own. And that's not taking anything away from farmers, by the way. I love farmers too. But yeah, so not to dwell on it too much, guys, but it comes with a bad taste in some people's mouth. And I think the bad hunters are actually called poachers, and they're not hunters. So the ones that give us a bad name, that are shooting things improperly or legally, that anger the world, aren't hunters. We're out there trying to just follow all the laws and shoot our one deer, our one turkey, and just enjoy the process. And the actual hunt itself, you nailed it, about fishing, about chasing business, about chasing a salmon in the river. The hunt is what makes it exciting. I've been on a farm having to put down a cow before, and it made me ill. Like, it was awful. So anyways.
Yeah. And so Keith, like, how did, I look at you and just kind of, it's like, to be totally honest, like, in awe of all that you have, in all that you've done and accomplished, and navigating a sometimes controversial world, and knowing just from my kind of outside of seeing the changes with Canada in the Rough and the different networks that you guys have gone on and things like that, of just this, like, your ability to just be able to navigate change.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I think any business person or entrepreneur, no matter the topic, I know, Pete, we've chatted about the restaurant industry before, and there's always change, right? And the key to success in business for us is, number one, we have a great team. I have two of the best brothers a guy could ever ask for. We have incredible wives that support and allow us to chase this. But it goes down to our kids, to our parents. But then the next part is, you just don't accept failure. Like failure is not an option. Like, this is what we do for a living. We need to find a way every day. And it is literally every day. So, we take 4 weeks holidays. We work 48 weeks a year. We're here 9 to 5. We have a great team, and this is our business. So when a network fails, we search and find another one. When a sponsor leaves, I search and find another one. When something isn't working right, we find a way. Lucky for us, we found something that people want to consume. And that is media. And we're just luckily to do it in a passionate form that we love and we care. We don't have to act for this. We're not a reality TV show in the sense of what you'd see on TV. We're a reality TV show in the sense of a camera follows me around and goes and hunts, and I'm not acting. Like, that's just what we do and what we know. Luckily for us, people are receiving of that and accepting of that, and are okay with how we're doing it.
It's like, Keith, one of the greatest things that you've shared with me over time, and when we first met, when I was doing some work with tourism, was, I remember Terry connecting us. Terry Smith, he's the president of Canadian Wild Turkey Federation, is like, you gotta talk to Keith and the Beasley guys and get their perspective. And you essentially just offered up so much knowledge of how each province deals with different aspects of this type of tourism, outfitting and guiding. But the biggest part for me was how you actually just offered it without any expectations in return. You really just said, I'm here to help you get this over the finish line. Of course, if Canada in the Rough can be at the table to help participate in that, that's great. But our bigger purpose here is to help you be as successful as you can in the business world and leadership. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give anybody, is to give them yourself whole with nothing expected in return. So is that, I know, like, you speak about family lots, and you've got a huge family and lots of mouths to feed there, and sports and all that stuff to balance. Is that something that was instilled in you early on, like when you were a kid, or just, can you share a little bit of that leadership style? And
yeah, I mean, listen, I want everybody to know, like, we don't, you guys didn't send me a list of questions. So as this stuff comes out, I may stumble a little bit, but I mean, I'm honored about what you said there, Pete, because if that's what you took away from our first meeting, that means a lot to me, because business number one rule for me and for us and my brothers and I is networking. I mean, it's who you know and who wants to work with you, who trusts you. And at the end of the day, we are huge believers in building relationships of trust. And I believe that's why we're still here. We build a relationship with the public, and we build a relationship with the corporate world, that they can put their name on Keith, Kevin, and Paul Beasley and say, I believe that Keith, Kevin, and Paul will live their life properly, that we as Bass Pro Shops, we as Beretta can say that they're ambassadors for us. And, speaking to you, Pete, about the topic, we knew each other on that. New Brunswick, the province of New Brunswick would say, I'd be proud to bring a Beasley brother here and have them represent and showcase that this is who we are. We're one of the Beasleys. And although we're from Ontario, I know you know what I mean. Like, when I walk into Newfoundland or the Yukon, we're all sharing the same message. And that was my message to you. And I really mean that. I mean, I plan on calling you, Pete, and asking for advice another day that doesn't benefit me or you financially, and that's what networking is. So when it comes to core values and leadership things, I mean, we've been very blessed with a mom and a dad who raised their 5 kids. I didn't have 5 to copy them, I promise. But core values were critical. I mean, who you were as a person. My dad taught us from a very, very early age. It hung outside the bathroom in the hallway that the name that he gave us, not our first name, our last name, meant everything to him. It meant everything to his dad. It was being passed on pure and clean. It was our job to carry it on to the next generation. So that's always been instilled in us. And then through athletics, jobs, sports, Paul, Kevin, and I all served 2-year missions for our church. We paid for with our own money at 19 years old to volunteer around the world. So that set a foundation of giving back for us. We took time out, didn't make a cent while we were there, and gave back to our communities that we were in, and come home at 21-year-old to start university and college from there. So we're all behind our friends, but we learn a critical piece, and that's hard work and sacrifice are always at the beginning. And then how you treat people and how it layers down is number one. So our business is always built on just people and relationships. And the money side of it will always figure itself out if you're hard enough working, I believe.
Yeah. I love that you mentioning the core values. And, as Pete and I, are both executive leadership coaches. And I quite often ask my clients, especially at the beginning, of what are your core values? And how many people have never taken the time to actually think that. And I think that I know for me personally, whenever something feels off in what it is that I'm doing, it's usually because it is not in alignment with what my core values are. And so do you, as a company, do you guys have these core values that in every decision that you are making, especially business amongst family, that it is always coming back to staying in alignment with what those core values are?
Yeah, and I think the cool part is we didn't have to write them down. They're not written anywhere. We all knew them. We all discussed them, and that's why it works. Because I know when I leave the office that Kevin has the exact same feeling on something that I do. I know that Paul does. So when we have a vote, we're big on this, and I don't want to go against anything you guys are teaching in yours. So this is Keith's 2 cents to what we're talking about. Because I don't know what you're coaching people, but for our 2 cents, it comes down to thoughts to our mind and feelings to our heart. And those have to be at the proper place. And if they don't feel right, it doesn't happen. We've turned down a lot of money deals over that simple decision. I'm not even joking when I tell you that. If it doesn't feel right, we'll turn it down. If it doesn't make sense, we'll turn it down. We're risk takers at a level, but we're not bad feeling and bad gut feeling guys. We have to feel good about it. And if it feels right and we feel it's the right opportunity, then we move on it. And that's how we move every day.
Yeah, I'm fully respect that. And I'm the same way of this thing of sometimes when the answer is a no, even though you might not know why, or it might not make sense, it's just no, you gotta trust that. Just kind of really trusting on that intuition or on that faith or whatever that is for people, but just how important that is.
Yeah, it's actually trusting your gut, which is, when I'm working with my clients, I'm sure, Emily, it's the same with you, and just in working in different industries and things like that. Anytime I've ever gone against my gut, it's always been bad, and every time I've gone with it, it's always worked out. And it's one of those things that, even though it doesn't make sense here, it really makes sense here. And when it makes sense here, and you follow those instincts, right? It's no different than a salmon returning to the sea. If it felt like it was going the wrong way, it's going to end up in a small stream and die, right? So, I think it's a great lesson you're sharing, Keith, about really just operating your life on a high level of integrity, and also 2, trusting your gut to really kind of, if when you're on the fence about a decision, and it's so cool that you can be lined up with your brothers like that, because I can only imagine the dynamics. I probably couldn't sit in a room with my 3 siblings and try and come up with a decision quickly, easily, and certainly on the same page. So I'm sure that's a pretty rewarding experience too, to be able to kind of rely on your family to share those same values, even though they're not written on the wall like we see in a lot of corporate headquarters.
It is. I mean, it's rewarding, fulfilling. I don't know, when I watch the boys do something, I'm proud of them. When I watch them shoot a big moose or do something special, I'm proud of them. I'm not jealous. I'm not, there's days that Kevin shoots a lot more than me. And I'm like, you little bugger. Like, how do you keep doing that? But I'm proud of them because we're all on the whole growing the pie. Right. And we're also very proud, like, you know, it's our 21st year in business. We feel we've been growing an industry too, right? Not that we're growing it, but we're part of growing it. You know, like Pete, we chatted about this, you know, New Brunswick tourism and us have been chatting for 15 years, trying to grow a plan and a package to make us all better at showcasing how incredible your province is. So there's just a lot of little things over the years that we're just very proud of. We're very, you know, I hear you guys give an intro all these years later, and I still get goosebumps that somebody would say that about us, right? So it's very fascinating. And I think we just finished a big trade show season. Started with seeing you guys in New Brunswick in January. I think we've been to 18 or 20 events in the last 3 months. And I'm just incredibly humbled every single time someone comes up to me at the Toronto Sports Show or wherever and says, on Sunday, when you did this, and you know, to know that we're in their living room with them on a Sunday morning, or they're watching us on YouTube now, and you know, that people actually know, and right down to the detail, like they know what hat we had on, they know what the moose did, they know what we said, and they'll know it from 10 years ago. Like that's humbling beyond belief, like beyond belief.
Yeah.
It's the changes that you guys have experienced. You know, I guess you started out early on in the outfitting and guiding industry and kind of moved into that fro. And from there developed the records for Ontario and then into the Whitetail magazine and then acquiring the Canada in the Rough, like the biggest hunting show in Canada. It takes a lot of guts and gut decision and stuff. When it came to like pulling that stuff together in your entrepreneurial adventure, like what was the biggest challenge and what do you think kind of kept you guys successful throughout that?
Biggest challenge, money. Kept us successful. Failure wasn't an option. Naive to a fault, but that's what kept us going. I don't think any so when we started, I was trying to be a financial planner. I was 22 years old and I was broke. And my boss said to me, I'm building a log cabin in Temagami 5 hours away. Your brothers are both in university and college. Why don't you grab them? I know they're good, hardworking boys, and go do this job for me for the summer, knowing I'm not making any money. This big Toronto successful guy says, go Pioneer draw knife these logs for me. So literally take the Pioneer draw knife and these 180 white pine logs, 50 feet long, 8-foot butts. And to make a long story short as I can, we started doing them individually. And then we realized that if we worked together, the logs would go faster. And it did. We ended up 3 times faster than anybody else doing them. And and we rotate 3 times on the log, top, bottom, middle. And you get the top, bottom, middle on every log. The top sucked because it's the most knots. Anyway, that was the first. I'm giving you an analogy that built the rest of our lives for us. The 3 of us learned to work together and share the load. And, you know, we've never made a cent different. We've always equally tried to balance the roles. But that was a critical piece. And we stood there over that log for 8 weeks saying, what could we do to make money doing something we love for a living? And we're crazy about hunting and fishing. And we said, let's start a hunting magazine. So that started that. We had already been volunteering for scoring for the record book. Well, that amazing gentleman who's since passed, Rick Poulin, was getting, things were slowed down. It wasn't going well for him. So when we start the magazine, we go to him and say, we'd like to take this over. So we buy that. Money was the biggest object. We just started a magazine without any sponsors. I was working, not doing well at my job. My next job was a sales job. I didn't have time to go sell. So I became a cop, all to have a Tuesday at 2:00 off to go to Bass Pro Shop. So I became a police officer to start my family, have enough money, but I didn't become a police officer for the money or the job security. I became a police officer. So I had shift work to go sell my side business. So that's the beginning, early stages. And then as the magazine launches, Canada in the Rough launches at the exact same time. Same year, we both launch and don't know each other. Wow. And Thomas and us are at trade shows together and seeing each other. And we'd be at booths and we'd be buzzing and he'd be picking our brain and we'd be picking his. And then he came to us one day and he said, I'd like you guys to take over. He's a busy, very successful businessman outside of the hunting industry. He said, I'm really busy. I'd like you guys to take over filming my whitetail shows and do the whitetail stuff because we were really good. That was our thing, was Whitetail magazine. So we committed to that. And then the 2008 US crash happened and they lost some major sponsors with Ram at Canada Rough and Thomas was backing out. So he came to us. He says, why don't you guys look at taking this over? And we had no money, like none. Like I'm brand new family, little baby, Like we're broke. So we worked out a deal with him based on gross revenue that we'd pay him on points on how successful we were over 5 years. Like,
wow,
who, where else could we come up? The bank didn't want to talk to us. We had nothing. So anyway, that's the beginning of it. So money was the biggest challenge. How we kept it going, I believe, was naive to a fault. Before we started, we went in. I played on a men's league hockey team with the Shimano Canada boys right at Peterborough here. All phenomenal hockey players. So in their 30s and 40s, a lot of ex-pros had played there. My brothers and I were good hockey players. So at 21, 22, they brought me over to their men's team. And the president of Shimano Canada was a goalie. And amazing man. If he ends up listening to this, and I know he'll let me tell this story because he put his arm around me at an outdoor caucus in Ottawa in front of 40 MPs and told this story. So we went to his office one day. We put suits and ties on. We went in to see Tom Brook at Shimano Canada. And we said, Brooko, listen, thank you for the hour. Make it time for us. We need your advice. We want to start a whitetail hunting magazine. And this is the godfather of tournament fishing in Canada. Like, this is the man. He's the man. And he looked at us and he said, boys, I love you. You're great kids. Don't do it. We said, Tom, but Tom. And I gave him all the reasons. I used car salesman to heck of it. He goes, boys, listen to me. Don't confuse your business with your passion. And it's not what it's cracked up to be. I sell media to these guys. I buy media. Like, it's not that easy. It's not easy to be Bob Azumi. And I'll never forget it. And we walked out of there just crushed. But this is where I said to you, naive to a fault. We said, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And we just carried on. And Tom Brook did know what he was talking about to a level, but he didn't know how full of energy and full of determination we were. And that we just pushed on and just did it. We launched the magazine with a couple sponsors, believing that if we built it, they would come. And it did happen.
Yeah. I love that level of believing. And I love being naive to things because it kind of gives you this thing of like, you don't know any better. And like, in my kind of like previous life, I was a cyclist, a bike racer. And like, I mean, I would go to like huge world tour races and be like, kind of so naive, but just like believe in myself. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to race my bike. I'm just going to do this. And then it's like, and then I won a race and everyone was like, why is she even on the start line? Like, how did she even make it here?
Yeah. Cause the math didn't make sense for you to win. Right.
No.
And I love that story because I'm not telling you we were smart. We weren't smart. Like that's why I'm saying naive. Like I'm using the word on purpose. We didn't have it figured out.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful too when you're talking to people because a lot of people have called. Like I've had 10 police officers call me over 10 years saying, hey, how'd you get out? So you got to watch this too, though, right? Like we did everything right. Like I went 8 years without taking a penny out of the company, doing other things to make sure my family was fed. So like there's these risks and rewards, but you got to be willing to work every weekend, work every night, but not affect paying your mortgage and everything. You got to be smart too, right? So I got to always qualify this. Anybody can chase their dreams, but absolutely do it with a calculation in mind. Don't just mortgage the farm and start a dream because like 8 years before I took a penny, other than getting Wendy's and my gas money on the weekends, I didn't take a cent. And then we put Paul full-time first. And then as soon as TV came along, we put Kevin full-time, who worked for Shimano, by the way. And then we put Kevin full-time and it just went from there. And then I was the last to go. And the day I left, I'll never forget it. The boys, we went to a meeting one day, the three of us, and they said, we're working too hard. You're working too hard. We're doing every weekend. I had 3 kids at the time. And they said, we either all need to do this or we need to look at folding it up because what we're making and the time we're all putting in doesn't make a lot of sense. So the only thing that made sense was for me to leave the OPP. And I was the last to go, obviously, with the government job and the security. And all of us go at it. But the day I left the OPP, we didn't have a cent to pay me. So I remember coming home to my wife, and she's an amazing woman, stay-home mom. Like, she didn't have an income at the time. And I just said, I want to do this. And she says, do you think you can do this? And I said, yeah, I do. She goes, okay. So I quit. And within 30 days, we had my wage figured out, and we never looked back. And that's 13 years ago. So
amazing.
Wow.
What do you think, looking at yourself as a who you are in the field, let's say, and of what skill sets make you a successful hunter, that it is those same skill sets that has made you be such a successful entrepreneur?
I've never been asked that before.
Oh my gosh, you got to spend more time with me.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe I need to spend more time cycling with you because I need to.
I don't cycle
I have two
anymore.
skinny brothers and I am over here, but
I mostly spend my time fishing and hunting. That has replaced my cycling.
In remote areas.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer this, but I need to just go around a bit. My wife came from a non-sport family and I came from a really sporty athletic family. And I said to her, the one thing that my one deal with you with these kids is I want them to play sports. And she says, why? I said, because I think it teaches them so many elements in life, like leadership, win, lose, like emotions, to control yourself and want something bigger than yourself, work with a team. And that was part of my childhood, but so was hunting and fishing. And right with all the great hockey analogies I can give you hunting analogies. So the days we got up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning after coming in at 1 a.m. and we went and chased these deer for hours and failed, but we never quit. And failure wasn't an option in our heads, right? Like, we're going to get that deer, even if it's 3 years from, we're going to get it and we're going to find a way and I'm going to get better at it. And if the wind's wrong today, I'm going to come back when the wind's right. And I'm going to be able to stand so I'm better prepared next Saturday because he beat me with an east wind that day. And so these hunting stories and these sports stories just led into this business world for us. So when we're in the field hunting, I don't go to Newfoundland moose hunting thinking that I'm not going to get a moose. If it's raining, we're climbing over 2 mountains more. Like it's just we're going no matter what. And we're talking all the time here. You guys would laugh. People would laugh watching the three of us navigate local turkey or deer season, scouting and tricks. And okay, but what have you thought of that? Or why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? It never ends. So business and hunting and fishing and sports, I think, are all the same. You want to win. You want to win. At the end of the day, you want to win. So, and winning for us is just making a living in our business world. Winning in hunting is getting a turkey to eat it and enjoy the hunt. And winning in sports is obvious. But when you lose and you don't succeed in all of them, you just pick yourself back up, brush off, and carry on. Carry on. Yeah.
I love that. And I don't know if you heard Pete and I just kind of chatting a little bit before you brought that on about, like, for me, that be do have in, okay, I want to have 100-pound permit in my hands. I want to have a whitetail deer. I want to have a whatever contract with the company. How do I need to be showing up? What do I need to be doing? Am I going to go over that extra mountain pass, or am I just going to kind of call it quits? And those things that, like, I think that's one of the things that I love so much about sharing the outdoors and my passion of the outdoors with people and going and experiencing it with other people, because we get to learn so much about ourselves in the circumstances that we put ourselves in. So many analogies. I love them.
Yeah. And it sounds like, Keith, like, failure's not an option. And that's fabulous outlook. It's also, there's tons of lessons in failure. Every time you, like, it was east wind that day and I didn't have a stand set up. So I'm going to go build one to hunt the east wind. So next time I double my chances. So I didn't fail. I learned and I moved on and I made that better. And whether that's through hunting or business, each time something doesn't exactly work out, you adjust, alter, and move. And so I guess, how do you maintain that level of optimism despite all those challenges and failures that inevitably come your way?
Yeah, and I think, like, my words may not be nailing this perfectly, right? Like, failure is not an option. Well, we all fail, and I failed 100 times. But when I say it's not an option, it's never the end. Like, when I got to take a knee, I take a knee, and then I get up, brush off, and I just carry on, whether it's on the mountain or in business. So, I mean, the optimism comes from, I know we can find a way to figure this out, and that's what we'll do. So here's a good one for you. For 15 years, I made a living selling 7 million TV views a year. French, English, 6 networks in Canada, 1 national in the US equals to 7 million people watch the TV show a year in North America, which is going to sound like a lot when you hear Super Bowl numbers and stuff, but for our space, that's a very significant number. Like, there's only 1.4 million hunters in Canada, right? There's only 10 million in the US. So to think that at 1.4 million hunters in Canada, we're getting 6 million TV views a year, the math would show you that that's penetrating a market, right? So in 2023, this number boggles my brain. But again, don't compare us to to a famous, don't compare us to Taylor Swift or somebody else in another genre, but we did 458 million social media numbers. So our reach and our impressions were 458 million in 2023. 2024 looks like they're going to go up 50% again. 2025, wow. If this rate, we'll be nipping in on 1 billion. So here is a change that we didn't create social media. Like I didn't come up with this. So this isn't me being smart. This is us just working hard to take advantage of the opportunities that the market continues to offer. People consume our product. Pete, your restaurant industry would have been no different. The foodies consume good food, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to track down good food and good service. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to get great turkey footage. I'm going to put it out there to the world. But now instead of 7 million TV views, we're selling 458 million views. And we're doing it in a way that's not every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. We're doing it as 24/7. And oh, by the way, we just brought a generation of 50-plus-year-old male demographic to YouTube with us. I'm not saying we're getting the pat on the back. It's happening over time. But what do the 50-plus-year-old demographic want to watch? They want to watch something they like. What does ours want to watch? They want to watch big moose, big deer, big whatever. So this evolution and change is happening whether we're ready for it or not. We got to be willing and eager and able to go at it. One example would be we started Facebook first, rocked it. Facebook just started to do this. We started Twitter second. And I was embarrassed every year taking my Twitter numbers into RAM or to Bass Pro. I'm like, this is pathetic. Then I realized Twitter's not my market. So we dropped Twitter and moved Instagram. And Instagram went like this, and then YouTube. And now we're on TikTok, and it's actually working, even though I don't know what TikTok is and I don't have TikTok. But, we have 50,000 people watching on TikTok. It's like, so anyway, all of those are little business stories of just times change, and they changed fast and drastically for us in the last 10 years. We spent 10 years without a social media channel.
Yeah. And it is so cool, to see of how people really feel like that they are a part of the hunt. And, I spent a lot of time fly fishing in remote destinations all over the world. And whether it is through social media that I'm sharing things of how many people are so engaged and captivated by it. And at first, I kind of felt weird about it, but then it's like, you're giving other people an experience that they might never get to go on, or that they're still kind of like planning of or dreaming of, but they get to go and they get to have that experience with you. And I even look at myself and watching episodes of your show, and it was like, gosh, like in some ways, like I've been on my first pheasant hunt. I've been on my first bear hunt. I've been like stalking whitetail deer. And then it's like, then you get to go and experience them on your own, or kind of dream through these things about like what potentially is possible. And I think that sharing those adventures, I'm not surprised that there's that many millions of people watching it, because it is such a cool thing to get to feel and be a part of something and see and feel the emotion that goes into it and kind of experience it through somebody else.
Yeah. You nailed it. Because we're a consumer of our own product, right? That's the catch. We're not providing product for somebody else. We're providing product that we love, that we consume. So it's easy to do for us. But to your point, people feel part of it because they're coming along with you. The emotions come through the screen. One great example would be COVID hit, and normally we take guests on the bear hunts with us. Well, COVID hit, the Americans couldn't come up. We had work permits to travel to other provinces, so I was able to take my son with me on 3 straight bear hunts over the 3 kind of COVID springs. And the audience watched my son shoot his first bear at 12, and then they watched him at 13, and watched him at 14. And he may never get on another show with me to do that, but I've got more response out of that little boy shooting his first bear with me, or a second bear that he's hugging me crying and I'm crying, than I have of everything I've ever done. The biggest moose I've shot, the biggest deer I've shot, the coolest footage I've ever got. More people in the last 3 to 4 years have commented to me about that show with my little boy because they felt it. It related to them. It connected them back to a time with their mom, a time with their dad, a time with their grandpa, a time with their uncle. It joins us somehow, because hunting and fishing does that. There's not many industries that do this. It's built on emotion, and it gets us all out of the busy world, right? It gets us outside. And I will challenge anybody to let me take them on their first hunting or fishing trip and shoot a gun, hook a fish and challenge them not to smile when they do
it. Yeah. Same. I actually was chatting with a gentleman who was on a trip last week with me, and he had been, so we were saltwater fishing, and he runs a very successful company down in the States. And he had been trying to catch a fish, a certain type of saltwater fish, for 4 years. Never got one. Finally, he got one. And he said that he showed the photo to his kids, and his kids looked at it, and his son specifically said, "Dad, I have never seen so much joy on your face before." And, it's like the determination that goes into like building these huge companies and like all of the challenges, yet it's that same determination that can go into just like catching a fish. And then when it happens, it's like that joy that it's like people, they see it, they feel it, and then they want it.
The reason that people who haven't hunted fish can't relate to that is because there's so much of your soul that's invested into searching and hunting and chasing that fish or that deer that we're sometimes overcome with emotion too, not just the big grin, because that's our Stanley Cup, right? Like that's our Olympic gold medal. That's our Stanley Cup. And not to objectify a fish or a moose, but when you shoot that biggest moose or catch the biggest permit, or you catch, for me, like a 6-pound largemouth bass here would be that mark. It's your moment. It's your moment. You've dreamed about it. You've processed it. You've thought about it. And then when it finally works and the stars all line up that your hook and that mouth connected, or that deer and you connected, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Love it.
It's awesome. Your passion is incredible. The tradition that you've shared with Canadians for all these years and continue to live it and breathe it in with your family and your kids is awesome. Your stories of perseverance and entrepreneurship, like it's I know those pains and struggles, and I share that attitude of don't quit. And I know Emily is equally, if not more so, can relate to that don't quit, like no matter what happens, and remaining optimistic and positive and seeing the opportunities and trusting your gut. Just great stories to share, and then relating them to looking around the next corner to find that next pool that might hold the next largest the 6-pound largemouth or whatever you're searching for in the world of possibility. It's awesome, Keith. Thanks for sharing all that stuff.
You bet.
Yeah, and too, that thing on like just the traditions and our heritage and our cultures, and with everything that you're doing, Keith, like you're showcasing Canada. And like all of this stuff. It's like I look at the province of New Brunswick and just like even everything that we have here. But just like, yeah, what a beautiful country we have with so many incredible resources and everything that is being done from a conservation standpoint and sustainable standpoint. And that we're all just stewards of the land and stewards of building relationships and just trying to live a life of integrity and those core values. And the possibilities are so endless, and all the ways that we get to learn about ourselves in the process and learn about others and how connected all of these activities bring us. And even keep the little backstory between Pete and I. We knew each other as colleagues through executive coaching, and I was going on a snow goose hunt. It was like over a year ago, and we ended up having an extra spot, and I was like, I wonder if Pete would want to go. And so I called Pete, and he came, and it was spending like 3 days together in a blind and having the most just thought-provoking, deep conversation while laughing together and learning together and just being connected through a hunt while being out in nature in Canada, surrounded by just the beauty of the earth. And just obviously I'm still grinning ear to ear. I love it so much.
Yeah. What else makes you grin like that? That's, and a little hunting story here for you. And if we got to go, please cut me off.
Yeah, no.
that goes back to your conversation about you wouldn't be embarrassed to have a steak in your grocery cart, right? Somebody has to kill these animals, right? Somebody has to do it for us to eat them. So hunting is so rewarding because you get the enjoyment of the hunt and the chase in there. Then you get the rewarding of the processing and the seeing it. And you took a life. Like I've had some very humbling moments by myself without the camera, sitting beside that life I took. Like it's not always a giant grin. And sometimes it's a humbling moment. But then you get the reward of the harvest. And what I think a lot of people forget is there's biologists federally and provincially that work together. The snow geese are an amazing topic. We do a whole podcast on them. The sandhill crane's an amazing topic. But biologists today are running their numbers on a 5% mortality rate. And hunters are part of that. So is winter kill, so is poaching, so is roadkill, so is train kill, so is indigenous harvest. 5% mortality rate of a species in our province and our territories. 5%. That's it. Like 95% are intended to survive. And we're out partaking in the 5% as a renewable resource, no different than oil or gas or no different than lumber. And I know it's a life, but it's a life that sustains and feeds another life. And I am a big believer that we are on the top of the food chain, and these have been put here for our enjoyment and betterment of our world. And if we treat them right and love them, and I love your word, Emily, if we're stewards of the land and we care for these animals and these critters, that harvesting them ethically and morally and doing it right, we can feed our families and have a great time visiting our friends like you and Pete in a goose blind. I know that feeling. I know the time you can spend, or over top of a boat, sitting with a friend fishing, or with your kid. We're going to take a couple fish out of the lake to fry on the side of the fire, but 99.9% are going to thrive and make babies next year and do it again. So that's the balance, and that's the number, right? And that's what I think for us, we've been able to capture and share on TV. And the unseen success of the show that we didn't know was people would actually relate to brothers better than we thought, because it would connect them to their own families. They'd connect. If everybody thinks back to their first hunting or fishing memory, it comes back to somebody they loved and trusted, whether it was a friend, but most often it is a family member they cared about. And I'm not trying to leave mothers out of this, because mothers are a huge part of this, but it often comes back to a grandfather, an uncle, a dad who took you hunting. Now, women in hunting, amazing. It's come so far. Love this topic. Yeah. We all have little girls here, and they're all hunters. My daughter shot her first bear last year, and so this is just a growing, evolving, incredible process, and we're just very grateful to be part of it. Very grateful to share it. We have 3 full-time producers in our office right here across the hall from me that all go out, in 52 weeks here, we're building content, and that's where the YouTube machines now come in to feed that beast. But we're able to take 20. We started filming last week our 21st season for 2025. We're able to take all that content and break it into pieces and feed the YouTube now, and that's kind of cool too.
Awesome. Amazing. So exciting. Keith, I'm just so appreciative of you, for one, sharing your passion with all of us, and for taking the time even more to come onto the podcast. And, even when Pete and I had been talking, I said, do you think Keith would want to come on the podcast? And, Pete spoke about how times that he has reached out to you and how you have just been so giving of your time. And I know even with coming to Fredericton and just the different trade shows and just your just the way that you give so much, all while being a family man and there for your children and your wives and your brothers, and then this whole world of people who are watching you. And so, just very appreciative that you took the time to come on here and to share about why it is that you do what you do. And so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thank you for providing 20 years of television service.
That's kind of crazy.
Saturday morning.
Kind of crazy.
In Canada. Yeah. And all of
Here's
our
20 more years.
Yeah. Cheers to that. Cheers to that.
Amen. And so we are going to list all of Keith's information and any extras we discussed in the show notes. And the best place to find all of that is on our website. We are active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can see the video version of ourselves on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, the podcast is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll chat next time. Thank you for listening. Follow or subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app or visit boilingpointpodcast.com for more.